Welcome to The Tea. I'm Tina.
And I'm Erin. We are on air.
The Tea is on air.
The tea is on air.
On air, it's happening.
This is new,
So new.
right? Love the desk.
Very official.
It's so official.
Great lighting,
We hope.
hopefully, because again, no filters.
No.
Again, no filters.
That's what we need.
That's what,
Is the tea live?
The Tea live. I think The Tea
Caffeinated
on air,
and
that
live.
works.
That
Like The
works.
Tea on air.
Yeah, we should see if we can.
Maybe get one of
Take
these.
this.
Or maybe it's
Yeah.
a parting gift.
Love that.
We're at
Love
a
that.
podcast studio today, so
Yes.
and we're here today to talk about emotional intimacy,
Yes.
which is another part in our series on intimacy.
Yeah.
And so we thought we would dive right in today and talk a little bit about what actually is emotional intimacy.
Yes. Let's give it some
Yeah.
context.
So emotional intimacy is this mutual exchange of self-disclosure of our innermost feelings. And the other thing to note about emotional intimacy is we're not just speaking of intimate relationships. We're talking about all kinds of relationships, right? So whether it's familial, a friendship, platonic, intimate, the whole spectrum of relationship we're covering or speaking to rather. And also the other thing to say about emotional intimacy is that it's this feeling of connectedness and a feeling of closeness, right? So it's this idea of I'm allowing myself to be seen by the other and I'm also seeing them, right? So there's this reciprocity in emotional intimacy.
And Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, which we've highlighted as a main component of all intimacy previously. And vulnerability, while it can often have a bad rap for being weak, it's actually quite the contrary because it is risky, it's uncertain, it's an emotional exposure. And so it takes incredible courage to step into that. And I guess even just like to backtrack slightly, I don't know about you, but I have clients who will be very honest and frank and say, I don't want to be here in therapy to talk about feelings.
Right.
Who signs up for that?
Right, yeah.
And I think part of it is that we do a disservice to feelings as a society. And we'll unpack this a little bit more, but I understand who wants to go into a session to talk about feelings.
Right.
And I think maybe something, at least that I find, that can help is reframing what feelings even are, right? So we can talk about emotional intimacy and why it's important and, you know, what comprises emotional intimacy. And feelings are not right, wrong, good, or bad, right? So if I am feeling annoyed that somebody cut me off, that's valid. Sorry, cut me off driving, right? Or in talking or whatever.
yeah.
So I can feel annoyed and that's valid, right? I don't have to then judge myself, well, I shouldn't be annoyed, right? The person who cut me off was rushing to get to their whatever, loved one or something. The point is, when we take away that feelings are supposed to be, or are just judged in any way, it completely distracts from just the reality of the feeling. And the feeling is actually their navigational tools, which we'll get into a little bit more. But I just find myself in like clinically reframing feelings all of the time.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
of the time. Right?
And I find that as well, right? In my clinical experience in that I often have clients who come in, whether it's individual or couple, where they're coming in and, as you said, they don't want to talk about feelings. You know, so first of all, it's validating that with them and sort of validating this is uncomfortable and this feels vulnerable. And then exploring, as you just did, you know, and why. Why is it important and how does it support emotional intimacy? And I find, to your point, what you said about, which is one of the takeaways for today, which is, you know, feelings are neither good nor bad, is to not judge them. And instead, you know, inviting in curiosity to understand, well, what is this about, right? But I find often what clients do is they will, when they get to that point where they do express feelings, then they have this automatic response to it afterwards where it's judgment. You know, they'll say, well, I feel this and this is wrong. I feel this and I shouldn't. Or I feel this and maybe partner said it was wrong. Or I feel this and maybe parent, you know, said it's not okay or that I shouldn't, right? So it's allowing ourselves to feel and to just give ourselves permission and take ownership of our emotion that we're having, right? And to say, if I'm feeling sad, I don't need you to validate it or tell me it's okay or to justify it. It's enough that I'm feeling this today.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's information for me. That's information to tell me what's going on for me. What do I need? What's not working for me? Right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think there's something more, there's always something more that's happening underneath the surface. So if you're sharing that you're sad, it's going to make me uncomfortable to know that a loved one is struggling. So I want to fix the feeling. I want to take away the feeling. I want to, well, don't feel sad. You shouldn't feel sad.
Right.
Because this happened so long ago. Or I try to rationalize it, but really it's a reflection of how uncomfortable I am in seeing you in any type of discomfort.
right. And
Right?
sort of that
I hear
feeling.
that.
Yeah.
I hear
of
that a lot
not.
with couples. You always try to fix it, rather than just be open to whatever your person or in whatever relation is experiencing.
Yeah. And I think that's another key point or another takeaway potentially for someone, whether they're, again, in any kind of relationship, is in someone expressing and sharing emotion with you. So having that level of vulnerability, I'm not looking for you to fix it. I'm not looking for you to answer, to find a solution. I only need you to hear me in this moment. I only need you to hear this is what I'm feeling and to let me express it and to share it with you. Yeah. All right. And that's, about co-regulation, right? Like sharing, expressing, and then the other person has the opportunity where they can express empathy. They're attuned, right? They're listening.
Yes.
Right. I'm showing that I care.
Yeah.
Right. Which comes back to what is emotional intimacy, right? It's this deeper level of knowing, this deeper level of connection, this deeper level of understanding.
Yeah.
And so if for myself, if I can't share with you, right, and if you aren't receptive, even though it can be super uncomfortable, which makes sense for all the reasons, what you're going to speak to, right, in terms of what contributes to emotions and the layers of that, but which makes total sense. And also, I need you to sit here with me. I need you to sit in this with me, even when you are uncomfortable, even when you don't understand it, even when you are fearful.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. Right. When you're talking about intimacy, when we're talking about all intimacy, emotional intimacy is that deeper connection that you were talking about, and feelings are the way to do that. It is the strongest connector because it's a very human experience to have feelings. And whether we acknowledge that we have feelings and whether we have the emotional vocabulary to describe feelings, the reality is we all feel. And so, often I'll use the example of, having two different clients who the context of their experience is very similar. Maybe they have just lost a sibling. And one client is oh my goodness, I'm sad and I miss my sister, but I'm so glad for her. In her experience, she felt relief because sister had struggled and suffered in pain for so long. So for her, sister is in a better place. Whereas another client might come in having lost a sibling, and years later they are still heavy in grief and in despair because sister was taken too soon. It was a tragic accident. To unpack that, it's not about the context of the loss of a loved one, but rather what we're confronting and what we're the healing is the experience, is the felt sense, the emotion behind. For one, there was the relief and the missing, and the other was deep despair. And that's what makes empathy so powerful. And why it takes so much courage to be vulnerable, because when you are expressing a sadness and I am uncomfortable because I would never want you to feel uncomfortable. And it's
Sure.
hard to see you struggle. It means that I have to go to a place and a time when I have also felt sad, when I have also felt that. So then I can kind of crawl down into the trench with you to just be with you. So at the end of the day, at least you're not alone. Right. And Brene Brown, who we talk about as our superhero, one of, does such a great illustration of empathy in actually a little cartoon
Yes, yeah, I've seen
video,
that one.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe we can link that. I don't know.
Right, yeah, that'd be great.
It's just such a raw experience, but it's what connects humans. And so I guess, yes, if there's energy and there's a passion behind emotional intimacy
Right.
and this work that we do,
Right.
it's because it's just so human. And connection is something we are designed to yearn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of our most basic human needs, right? Right. In terms of right up there with food and water is our need to connect.
Yes.
Right.
Through massages.
Through massages.
Or sharing
And-
feelings.
Yeah. Or that. or both. Or you get a massage and you share feeling at the same time. Right. Because,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing about emotional intimacy, right? When we talk about, the depth and the disclosure, the self-disclosure, I'm sharing the high highs and I'm sharing the low lows. And to our little tagline on the T podcast, and the uh-ohs, right? It's all
Yeah.
those things. It's on
Totally.
the full continuum, right?
Totally.
It's this end, it's that end, and everything in between. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, can I be vulnerable? Can I share that? Right. And the other things that support, I think, emotional intimacy we see is that it's trust, right? I have to have this trust that when I'm sharing, you're hearing, and when I'm sharing, you can reflect back empathy, where I feel emotionally held,
Yeah.
or my felt sense is this deeper level of connection.
Yeah.
Because if we don't feel that, then that's something that would impact and maybe dissuade us, right? If I don't feel like you're receptive to my sharing, to my vulnerability, right? If I don't feel like you can hold me in that way, emotionally hold me, then I'm not going to share.
Yeah.
Right. So just in terms of speaking to, like, yes, the vulnerability supports it, the trust supports it, empathy supports that building of emotional intimacy,
Connection.
the
Yeah.
connection, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, right, if I want to speak to my experience of emotional intimacy, I think the not, because I've experienced both sides, the not having it
Yeah.
and the having it. So I think when you've had those experiences, you can clearly, qualitatively, there's a felt sense of the difference there. And I think when I haven't had it, it's lonely. It's so lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's lonely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lonely. And you feel so alone, right? And you feel not heard and not supported, and right, because emotional intimacy is also supported by that curiosity piece, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you curious? Do you want to know how I feel? Like, do you really want to know beyond the superficial level? Or does it just, when we go about in our day and we're like, oh, how are you? And good, how are you? Superficial.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, right? So it's like, are you curious? Like, do you really want to know how I'm doing? Like, do you really care? Are you really interested, right? So
Yeah.
it comes back to that curiosity piece, again, with emotional intimacy, right? And then I think the have is the complete opposite of that, is feeling secure, feeling supported. And again, on any type of relationship, right? Like having that secure attachment.
For sure.
Feeling heard,
Yeah.
feeling that when you come with the high highs or the low lows, they're there. They're there for it, right? Or they follow back with you or check back with you, right? Like if you're having a low low, it's like they loop back with you maybe a week later if it's a friend, or 2 weeks later, like, checking in with you. How are you doing with this, or how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Or and it's about being intentional. Right? To support that emotional intimacy in relationship is, am I being intentional, and am I being present? Right? So
Yeah.
if you're coming to me and you're sharing, you're sad or you're am I present when you're talking to me? Like, is that your felt sense?
Right.
That I'm listening. So, I don't know. I mean,
There's so many layers to it, because when you're describing that, it's almost like this, when I say that yearning, right? That human need to, it's this longing to be seen, right? That's the connection. That's the depth of when a connection, be it friend, familial, partnership, colleague, right? This is why emotional intimacy extends to all relations, is to what depth can you connect with somebody?
Right.
And I don't know about you. I know I can certainly speak in terms of friendships, but friendships have evolved for me for this very reason. Yes, I can have friends who will know the day-to-day, that I have to go and service my car, or what I'm doing this weekend. That's superficial. And then friends that I haven't talked to in 4 months, but we pick up a phone and I feel closer in a phone call than I have, right? Because we're covering more time and depth, right? That person doesn't need to know that, 3 weeks ago I got my car serviced, to know this is what I did, 5 weeks ago on a weekend. It's that, how are you doing? That question, right? And the other layer of is the intentionality when you talk about that, is that there can be every intention to want to connect. But again, it requires me to check myself to know if I can show up as present to you. What do I have to challenge in myself? How do I have to understand? How do I have to know myself in order to show up in empathy and present to you? And I think from again, a couple or even family standpoint, there can be a lot of barriers to what gets in the way of that, which we'll probably unpack further next episode. But in terms of that felt sense, I can certainly relate to wanting to connect and it not being received, or even the fear at times. I don't know if you've had this, but the fear of when I have been vulnerable, fearing that it could be weaponized, or in a moment of conflict that it be used against me.
Right. Yes.
Right. And that is massive grounds for relationship rupture.
Yes.
As you can imagine.
Yes. Big rupture.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what goes on with that, there's a lot of pieces related to.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like, I was vulnerable and I shared this raw piece with you.
So raw, exposed.
And then you circle back and it's weaponized and used in a conflict situation.
Yeah.
Huge rupture.
Big time. Big time.
And then that just, it's like, okay, so that wasn't safe. Right? Because safety is another big piece, which is trust, yes, but it's that safe. Like, am I safe to share with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to judge me in these raw emotions that I'm having?
Yes.
Or can you listen?
Right.
Can you just listen and be present?
Well, and it almost goes back to the example you were using previously about the client who judges, right? Here's my experience, and that's silly, or that's stupid, or right. If I'm judging me for being sad this long later, or what have you, then that would stand in the way of me sharing it or expecting what I can receive from you.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the how, I guess, or, in your clinical experience, how have you, what kind of direction, or how do you encourage individuals or couples to make steps towards that? Is there key things you say to them, or?
Well, and I think I can relate both. Well, certainly clinically, it comes back to an awareness, right? And I can relate on a personal level. Like, my self-awareness of where I'm at is going to definitely dictate how open I am to you.
Yeah.
But if there is an opportunity for connection and being emotionally intimate, but there seems to be a resistance from either partner, kind of exploring what's going on for you in this moment, right? That when happened recently, where she is trying to express how a comment he made really impacted her. And she carried it around that day, let's say. And he didn't want to acknowledge, much less accept accountability in that interaction. It was his shame coming up going, if I can make such a comment, then I am not a good partner.
Right.
And so he wanted to fight back that
Resistance.
or defend. Yeah, that resistance was representing his fear of not being a good partner, when that was not, in fact, what she was saying. She wanted to just highlight, she wanted to hear, what you said impacted me and it hurt me. And when he got to a place of being able to just hear that, I say just, it wasn't just, it was big. But when he was able to hear that and go, this isn't a reflection of me being a bad partner, well, now all of a sudden she feels closer in this interaction that started with your comment hurt me to, and now we feel close.
Right.
Because now she feels safe to share her experience, because it can land and him not take it with, now I am a bad person. Now I'm like, go into his own
didn't personalize
shame.
It, right? He didn't go into like a distortion there, or personalization.
Yes.
But I want to ask you, what do you think she, right? If he wasn't allowing it to land, how does she perceive that? What does she perceive, do you think, in that moment?
Do you have something at the tip of your tongue? I'm going to say shut down.
Shut down.
Yeah.
I say rejection.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Is so if you're not here to listen, not that I need you to justify it or tell me that it's okay, because I don't, my feeling is my feeling, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we try to teach our clients, like, give yourself permission. Yeah. And also, right, if I'm expressing and you're shut down and I could be interpreting that as a rejection. Like, what I'm feeling is not okay, right? And or what I'm feeling is abnormal, or what I'm feeling is not acceptable, or what, and the list can go on and on and on, right? So it's this feeling of, is there something defective in me,
right,
in this perceived rejection, that I'm at, that this isn't okay, or that I'm not allowed, right? And that comes back to one of the takeaways, right, is that giving ourselves permission, right? And when we are sometimes getting the feedback from someone we're in a relationship with who's resistant, that can be the messaging, right? Like, I'm not allowed, right? Or I'm rejected, or this isn't okay, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, that can create distance then, and can impact emotional intimacy, because guess what? If it's not resolved, it creates that rupture that you speak to.
Right.
And then what happens the next time? And the next time, and the next time, and the next time.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and this is why one of the strategies in that example is coming back to self-awareness, unpacking what's going on. And it seems so, somebody said, this is all just semantics.
Oh.
Yeah, it's all just semantics. And we're talking on and on about this, this one example, right? Which
Defense mechanism,
avoidance, and protecting all of the things that came up. The resistance, it was, right? It's not bad, but it's the response that we get curious about.
Yes.
Because it's all learned.
Yeah.
So once we can acknowledge that feelings are not right, they're not wrong, they're not good, they're not bad, they just are. And the same way that my physical body, I was cutting vegetables the other day for dinner. Using a knife, and nicks my finger. Well, physically, my thumb starts to bleed to let me know, provide TLC to my finger. We don't judge that. We don't go, I shouldn't be bleeding because the knife nicked my finger.
Exactly.
Right? But when it comes to feelings, it's like, it becomes a whole different narrative.
Right.
When in fact, feelings are just there to serve us as navigational tools.
Absolutely.
If I am in a safari confronted with a lion, you better believe I'm going to feel anxious, because anxiety is getting me the heck out of there. We hope.
Yes.
And so we're not going to judge anxiety in that moment.
Right.
I shouldn't feel anxious in front of the lion.
Yeah.
No, it's about, right?
And I think that's such a great visual for people who are more visual than others.
Aaron in front of a lion?
Right. No, that, but also the bleeding finger, the cut. Like, my finger's now bleeding.
Yeah.
Like, do I need a suture? Do I need a Band-Aid? We're not judging, right? It's just like you're curious, okay, what's happening? Assessing the situation. What do I need?
Yes.
Same thing with emotion, right? So I think that's a perfect example, right?
Well, it just challenges how we perceive it. And right, and again, we in a society, I've spent a lot of time, as you know, in the field of addictions, and it's all coping.
Yeah.
It's coping, right? So it's not like, so feelings aren't the problem. The same with conflict isn't the problem. It's what our narrative is behind it. And we learn our relationship with emotions is from what we saw.
Yep.
And this is not put on our caregivers and, and our family, because they learned from the generation before and the generation before, et cetera. So it's rather just giving space to going, the feeling is just the feeling. The other quote, actually, slight tangent, but the quote that I've constantly come across, and I used to do this and bring it up in workshops, was that no feeling is final. So just like my thumb's not going to bleed out.
Exactly.
Right? It's gonna have its time. I'm gonna assess. Oh, thank you, body, for letting me know.
Yep.
Put a Band-Aid on, or a suture. And the same way, sadness is not gonna have the same intensity.
Right.
However, when we repress,
Yep.
when we suppress, that lives on in a different intensity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
And I always say to clients, well, not always, but often, it's like the game of whack-a-mole at, these fairs,
totally.
right?
Yeah, I
or
do
the
use that
gopher,
too.
right?
Yes,
Like I'm
yes.
whacking down the emotion.
Right.
Guess what? It's coming for you from a different angle or a different spot, right? And so, and I always say that too. It's like we don't deal with it until it deals with us, right? Like we repress it until we can't repress anymore.
Right.
It's like keeping, packing things into a closet, right? And you keep shoving the emotion, and I'm shoving the emotion, and I'm masking, and I have all these defensive strategies that you've talked about, right? Which are all there for a reason, I've developed for a reason, but that's how I'm coping. I'm coping by avoiding emotion. So I just keep shoving it. And then it gets to that point where, the cupboard explodes.
Yeah.
Because
You can't go find an outfit because it's all going to come pouring out.
And how does it manifest itself, right?
Yeah.
So maybe to your point about working in addictions, like you would have seen that in addictions, right? Okay, so I've masked and avoided my emotions all my life. Okay, great. Now I'm addicted to porn. Now I'm addicted to narcotics. Now I'm addicted to alcohol. Now I'm addicted to gambling.
Yep.
Now I'm addicted to shopping. Now I'm replace that with whatever. But so it's if we're not learning how the language, you spoke to that earlier, right? Like what is the language so that we learn how to talk about our emotions, right? Because, and again, no fault, as you said, of family of origin, but the reality is that impacted us. Those those relationships with our primary caregivers impacted how we learned about emotion, how we modeled it, how we regulated it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's important to, again, give people the language, and then, give people some tools in terms of like, how do so I hear from you that emotion is important, and I need emotional intimacy in my life. Great. What next, right?
Yes.
And so I was reading something in Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight, and she talks about how we have to take risks to share our emotions, right? Which you spoke to in the vulnerability piece.
Yeah.
And she has this acronym, AR, so ARE, and basically she says, "Are you there? Are you with me?" And so the A in the acronym is for accessibility, which is like, can I reach you? Staying open to emotions even when they're difficult. And you spoke to that, right? Even when I'm not comfortable with it or I don't understand it. So staying open. And the second one is responsiveness. So can I rely on you to respond to me? Right? And you spoke to that too, right? Are you present? Are you when I'm expressing that I'm really sad or really scared, can you provide containment? Can you hold me? And then the last one is engagement. Do I know you value me, and will you stay close? And you spoke to that again as well, with that couple, right? Is she's expressing something, he's fearful and he feels shame. And so that is the opposite, right? It's a moving away from, right? So it's about doing the opposite of that. Is staying close, right? And, being, being present.
Right.
In terms of your clinical experience or even your personal experience, do you see, like, do you see the impact of giving clients some feedback or some exercises and them shifting? And I guess if so, what might be one of those things, or what is something that you find is like, oh, we had this in discussion in session and it was this key piece that maybe something that you come back to regularly, maybe something like that. Is there something?
Well, and I think in addition to reframing feelings, not right, wrong, good, bad, just are. And I think what I encounter often enough is somebody can, exactly like you were saying, can hear, okay, I need to learn feelings, talk feelings, and that's not my default for all the reasons, because I was a boy growing up and was told the crying is weak, so I'm not going to feel, I'm just going to do, or I'm going to fix so I don't have to feel. Or I was a little girl and I had all the feelings, and I was, there it eventually became crazy, or the stereotype of, oh, you have so many emotions, or so all the things because of that. So for all the reasons of why this gentleman in this particular couple I'm thinking of can go, that's all fine and great, Erin, but what am I supposed to do with that?
Right.
And kind of fell into the Brene Brown's research that highlighted that most people over 5 years and 7,000 plus studies or surveys saying that most people on average know 3 emotions: happy, sad, angry.
Right.
And that was the spectrum of emotions that he could relate to. Yeah. And so that wasn't the problem. We acknowledged that, okay, so you don't have the vocabulary of it. Okay. No kidding.
Fair.
You didn't learn it. And where are you experiencing that? Because I can say I witnessed you shifting all over the place in this
session.
Couch.
Yes.
You're doing this because your palms are sweaty.
Right.
Like, so when I can say, like, what are you experiencing right now? I'm fine, is what he would say. We've worked together for some time, and so now he jokes about it. But he can go, I know the word, but right now I'm feeling like somebody's standing on my chest.
Right.
Or, right?
Yes,
So this is where we can, a strategy can be to tap into, how is your body feeling? Because we carry the emotions, just like the whack-a-mole, and whatever we're suppressing, of course that's going to have
physical impact, a somatic impact, right? There's this somatic expression of emotion all the time, right? And I think is to help people understand we are feeling all day long, 24/7, 365 days a year. Yes. We're not thinking as much. We're feeling so much, right? And so much of that is on the subconscious level, right? So, but this idea is that, oh, I'm feeling, like you just said, like someone standing on my chest. Okay, what is that? Right? Yeah. What is happening? Or what is this? Am I scared? Is this fear?
Right.
Am I feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah.
You know?
And now partner, in this case, could hear, because he's presenting as, I'm fine. And so she's like, I don't know how we're talking about what we're talking about, but you're fine. This isn't fine.
Right.
Right. And so now it's kind of like a disconnect. It's like, okay, and so what's the feeling in your body?
Yeah.
I'm noticing the shift. There's a lot of movement. Yeah. Like, is there something to that?
Yeah.
And as soon as he said, I'm feeling like somebody's standing on my chest, she's like, oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah.
So then it was, I mean, we can always build vocabulary. And again, we live in a society that we could all use help with that.
Absolutely.
And it was that the connecting piece wasn't about where they started in the example. It was, we're in this together. We were both experiencing the same thing. Right. Now we're connected as we attack the problem.
Exactly.
As opposed to
joint,
that
it's
problem
together.
Is disconnecting.
Right. It's dividing us. Now we can look at it and sit here together.
Yeah.
Right. And also then it connects back to the empathy piece too. Right. Is that when he is able to connect and access that and communicate that, she's able to hold him, right? She's able to be empathic. And then he has what we call that a corrective emotional experience, right? He has the experience of, okay, I actually allowed myself to feel, I connected with what I was feeling, I expressed it, and that was okay. And nothing bad happened. And she was responsive and I felt heard. Yeah. And wow.
Yes.
corrective emotional experience.
For sure.
Right there.
For sure.
And then that sets the groundwork, right? That sets the in motion, like, okay, not so bad. Yes,
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable and I can do this again.
For sure.
Because as you said, right, that is so, we need that to connect, like our emotions, right, is so important and so integral.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and what that feels like, the felt sense of that.
Oh, completely. Well, the vulnerability that was required of him and a lot of clients, as you know, is that it challenges the very way that in which you were wired
Yeah.
to operate in your life. And again, I'm going to use the example, not all situations, but so commonly, right? Today, men learned, looked to their father and generations before to not feel.
Right.
And so then any
Right.
man who comes in to therapy with all types of twitching and like, this is so not me. I didn't want to be here. It was
Right.
an ultimatum that brought me here. All the
Right.
things. I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating to some degree for some. But what the vulnerability of what is required of him to go completely against what he has learned to do his whole life
Right. Yeah.
is incredibly courageous.
Well, absolutely. And for him, alarm bells are going off, right? That is a very scary experience and would feel super unsafe.
Yes.
And, you know,
Yeah.
contradictory to all the conditioning that he received,
Yes.
you know, as a child potentially, right? Of don't cry, don't feel, be stoic, be strong, be courageous, be, and what I like to say is that it actually takes courage and strength. So from a male's perspective, right, to be vulnerable and to connect with your emotions, I mean, that to me is strength.
Yes. Yes.
I
Have
think
you ever is there anything more attractive to you
No.
than, I mean, because
No.
you and I can be vulnerable
No.
all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know, from a romantic, I don't know that there's
Like, you know, that masculine energy combined with vulnerability. Like I'm confident, I'm strong. I know what I want. I know what I need, and I can express it, and I can
Yes.
tell you how I feel.
Yes.
And I can listen to how you feel.
yes.
Secret sauce.
I
Right
mean,
there. Right. And then in terms of
talk
connection.
about emotional intimacy and the connection to sexual intimacy.
Well,
Hey-o.
Hey-o. I mean, pathway too, right? And the funny thing is, I don't think it's just women. I think for men too, right? In terms of that, like how emotional intimacy impacts sexual intimacy, right? The vulnerability, the risk taking, trying different things, right?
Yeah.
If I feel safe and I feel you listen and I feel all these things, right? My felt sense of you is, I feel held, I feel supported, I feel that you're attuned to me.
I might take risks in other ways.
I might bring out the cartwheels or somersaults or I don't know.
Graduated
right?
massage. Hey-o.
Or any of those things. But just to say, right? Like that to me is, and I think for a man to feel that too from a woman, right? When you can feel my strength and my support and my love, and because it's reciprocity, right?
Yeah.
Like we're joking, but it's a two-way street. You know, for men to feel like, oh, is there space? Because I need to be on the receiving end of that too.
Yes.
Like when I am not feeling strong today and I need your support and I need your encouragement and I need your love and your validation or whatever it is, or I need you to listen. I need you to be my sounding board.
Just listen. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. He needs to feel that too.
Yeah.
But to me, when a man has that combination of, strength, like courage and
To
can
be
connect,
vulnerable.
to be vulnerable and connect and communicate. I mean, that's a solid.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. That's a solid, right? Like I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you're probably not. That relationship is probably there to stay.
Yeah.
For the long term, ish. I'm just saying.
And I guess it's not that anyone's experience is just like feelings. That's not right or wrong, good or bad, ever.
No.
I'm going to sound like a broken record,
No.
but I just really, we just encounter it so much that it's just so important. But rather it's just understanding it and bring that compassion. So for your earlier client about I feel this way and it's stupid, silly. I wonder what that would be like if she just accepted, right? I say just, I'm not saying just. that it's simple. But if she explored whose voice is saying it's stupid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then again, another strategy to employ could be, is she talking to herself as she would her 5-year-old self, or just a 5-year-old?
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that child whose ice cream fell off the cone stupid or silly for feeling sad and crying?
Right.
So now it's not an ice cream falling off a cone for you. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But it's, the relationship that ended over a year ago. How is it that you're still sad? It's not stupid or silly. It just is.
It just is. And that's the permission part,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah. It just is. It
So
just is.
self-awareness being our greatest tool. And I say that all the time too, as if it's so simple, but we don't know how to address or navigate if we don't know what we're fixing.
Right.
Right? What are you laughing at?
Okay. Well, we're recording this and it's a video podcast today, which is great. And I think we're doing super well. Also, I just don't know if you've given me
I'm just the drum roll.
I don't know if you've given me the tap sign.
Okay, there's
So
no...
newsflash, we had a code. We had codes. We had like a 1 tap, 2 tap, and a hand tap. So because Jimmy's not here.
Jimmy,
we don't have
Jimmy, where are you
just
at?
Jimmy.
Where are you at?
We don't have a Jimmy yet. Jimmy, if you see this and you think again you want to be a part of this, please
Anytime, Jimmy. Anytime.
email us.
This would
Jimmy.
be a good
but
yeah.
So I'm just not sure. I don't know if you gave me the tap or the 2 tap or the hand.
That could have been
I'm
a
not-
nervous twitch because
I'm not-
there's actually
I'm not
no
sure.
clock on this little display thing here.
Okay.
So we rolling.
Okay.
Which you know what is not atypical.
It's not atypical for us because
here we
that's
are.
what we do. We roll with it.
We do.
So just to clarify, there were no taps. We actually don't know how deep we're in. Is there time? Did it stop? It's not. It's going. It's recording. I mean,
Are we? Could you imagine?
I would just die. I would die. I mean, not really die.
Not.
but
I mean,
little
a
bit.
little piece of you. Yeah.
A little piece of you
Yep.
would be together. The tea.
Tea, absolutely. The tea would be poured down the drain.
Yeah. But maybe if we're doing, are we doing the wrap up now?
Yeah. Well, okay. So to that,
I mean,
no. Let's roll with that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, on air.
PS,
To that, what's that?
PS, can we take that home with us?
Do you think they'll notice? I don't think they'll notice. I feel like it's a good memento.
And you're coming home with me.
Yeah.
The on-air sign, that is.
The on air. I mean,
Yeah.
hey.
I think.
I don't know. We've covered the few intimate points and topics. Maybe
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. So I guess this is kind of like setting a bit of groundwork, if you will,
Yeah.
similar to sexual intimacy as we did, because I just think it's really, really important to debunk some of these myths, right? That we judge feelings, that there's any space for judging feelings when they just are. They
just
are
are.
the blood when we nick our thumb from chopping a carrot.
Yeah.
That is the sadness just because. And so kind of in sum, we have reframed feelings.
Yes.
Not good, bad, right, wrong. They just are. And no feeling is final. So roll with it.
Yep. Be curious. Use it as information.
Yes.
Right. In terms of what's happening for us. Is it telling us that a need is being compromised or not met in terms of positive emotion, right? And then the other piece is around giving myself permission to feel and not necessarily needing the validation or approval of the other, right? It's enough that I feel it. I don't need someone else to tell me that it's okay or not okay.
Yeah.
It just is.
It just is.
It just is.
Own it.
Own it and be curious about it. So I think that's another takeaway.
Yeah. And then I guess in knowing that feelings are our greatest source of connection.
Yeah.
It's a human experience. The challenge, I guess, would be to reflect on how have you felt today?
Yeah.
Get in touch because, right, self-awareness is our greatest tool. So how do we inform that? How do we increase that? It could be, the prompt could be, today I felt,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I want to even too, when I say like feelings aren't right, wrong, good or bad, like there are professionals who I've heard use, the negative emotion, the positive emotion, and it's such horse poop. I don't know. Can I swear? I know I don't
I mean, I
catch
think we
myself
can.
every time. Do we? Okay.
Yeah, I think we can.
Well, it's BS. It's just BS. There's no such thing. And as soon as we get into that, that's the trap. This is a good emotion. This is a bad. No, it's not. It's not negative or positive. It just is. Aaron in front of the line, anxiety. Thank you. So, getting in touch with that is really important. So, almost like media advertisements. I don't know what the stats are, but have you ever heard how we are bombarded with like thousands any given day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of marketing? The same goes, as you said, with that's how much we feel. Those are the experiences we all day, every day.
All day, every day.
So, so getting in touch with even a couple.
Yeah.
Or one. Start with one. And just acknowledge
Great starting point.
why that
One
was.
is great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One is perfect.
Yeah.
To check in with yourself, because it's building those connections and setting down those new neural pathways in our brain, right, of that type of response. So I feel this, then I do this, or I'm noticing this, then I get curious, and then I do this.
Yeah.
Right. So building in that behavior, right, in terms of connecting with and being curious and going, okay, like today I feel overwhelmed. Okay, what was that about? Or today I feel super happy or joyful, or I feel a sense of awe or wonder or excitement. Okay, what was that about? Because also too, I think in not doing that, we kind of can end up on autopilot in our life, and we miss a lot of things.
Yes.
And so, because again, as you say, emotions are so important. We need them. We need them to survive, to stay alive. They're there for a reason.
Yeah.
But when we go into autopilot and we're not taking time to notice and be present for all the emotions, like, are we really actually living?
Yeah.
And that would be a question, like, that I would ask from this is like, are
Yeah.
you really actually living? Are you really actually connected to yourself? Like,
You know what I'm
truly.
thinking of when you say
No.
that? Is the post that we did recently on the 5 regrets of the dying. Right? And it was such
Beautiful.
an impactful post as we've heard, we've received messages about it. And it's a regret is not stepping into the courage of expressing feelings.
Yeah.
And as someone, I'll spare details, but as somebody who recently lost, I guess, a connection, and there's sadness about it.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of sadness about it, actually. And
Yeah.
there it is. There it's coming up. There's also so much gratitude for this encounter, this. So whether people come into our lives for a long time, a short time,
A time, a reason, or a season.
absolutely,
As the poem
reason,
says, right?
lifetime. Yeah. It's more about the impact, right? The footprints on your heart. And I feel so grateful for that I would do it all over again, even though I'm confronted with sadness that it isn't what it was anymore. And I guess I just when you said that, I just thought of that post, and I think it's almost like a challenge to step into. How are we getting out of our comfort zone? I want to say that from Brene Brown about vulnerability. It's the unstable feeling we get when we step out of our comfort zone to do something that forces us to loosen control. Whew.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so by no means easy to do,
Nope.
certainly not comfortable to do. And think of any experience you've ever had in your life where you've been out of your comfort zone and it hasn't rewarded you,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shy of extremes,
Sure.
trauma and other.
We're
But
not
I'm saying,
yeah.
right?
Yes. Aside. Absolutely.
When you've been
Fair.
vulnerable, how much courage that's taken.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's like
It does take
tangent,
courage.
but
It's not a tangent. And I mean, thank you
Yeah.
for being vulnerable. I mean, this is really being vulnerable in
Here we are.
and here we are in
Yeah.
action, right? In
Yeah.
a very recent and lived experience for you. And here you are expressing and showing vulnerability. Yeah. Right? And what that feels like and how how to work through that and how to move that through that. And I think that's so valuable for our listeners, right? And I see emotion there, right? And I feel it from you.
Yeah.
And but this is emotional intimacy right here,
I know.
right now,
I know.
right, in real time.
And so that experience of you being able to meet me where I'm at in the sadness, I don't want you to take the sadness away, because I don't want you to shun
No.
it, shame it, judge
No.
it.
No.
It's just I'm not alone in it either.
Yeah.
Right. And then that helps me move to the place of tremendous gratitude for that connection. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. As if
you
that we
for-
just played that out in real time.
I know.
This is like
This is this is what it looks like. This was a live demonstration and not planned. And yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And I think we did it.
Here
Here
it
we
is.
are. And
Yes.
this was a lot of fun.
I
And
know, right?
Thank you for connecting and
Same.
for being my partner
Yeah.
in this. It's been a beautiful journey.
Totally.
And
Totally. And we're
it's
just
been so
getting
fun. And
started.
getting started.
We're all like, it's all the things.
Yeah.
It's all the
It's
things.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
For joining me and joining with me in this journey.
Yeah. Same.
Okay.
Same.